Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show once again. And on the hazardous weather graphic, the smoke advisory, or dense smoke advisory, is ended for the Kenai Peninsula today. There'll still be smoke around tonight at times into tomorrow, but it won't be anything too serious like we had seen earlier from the fires. And also the wind flow will be turning a little more west-northwest here coming up in the next day or two. And that'll tend to push it off the other direction. But we still have the flood advisory out until midday Monday, or the flood advisory for the Kenai River from Cooper Landing to Ski Lac Lake for high water levels and about the same conditions of what you've seen for the last several days there. Shouldn't get any worse than it already has been. So moving on, no other watches, warnings, or advisories out around the state. So taking a look at the fire danger graphic, not a lot of change from yesterday. Removed the extreme fire dangers out of the Susitna Valley and the Kenai Peninsula, but still widespread areas of high to very high fire danger in these areas and in the Copper River Basin over here. Otherwise, the remainder of the state looking pretty good fire danger-wise, nothing reaching the high threshold. Satellite imagery shows continued frontal action going on up here along the Arctic coast, North Slope areas there as westerly winds, Arctic jet, blowing from west to east almost right over, directing these systems eastward farther to the north, and that allowing these fronts to drag across and then weaken. And then another enhancement develops and you get a little bit better shot. But the wind's definitely a lot lighter here over the eastern Boulevard Sea coast than yesterday. Precipitation not too heavy, maybe 1-2 tenths at the most. Other areas just a few hundredths to nothing at all. A lot of clouds up there. Heaviest on the east side, lighter to the west, and heading southward. Basically south to north flow here, and that's what pulled a little more smoke in. Not too much though, but trending that northward, mostly west of Anchorage. It wasn't all that dense, but upper level disturbance here over the Alaska Peninsula. That triggered some thunderstorms earlier today, or late last night, early this morning over the peninsula, and then up over towards the Aleutian Range this afternoon, and then some clouds sliding just east of Kodiak. Otherwise a dry day over Kodiak Island, and showers, clouds continued, but slowly diminishing there over the southeast coast. And right down in here you can see some clouds streaming northward, kind of a fast-moving stream there, but that's the high cirrus caught up in the upper level wind flow. But this system is gathering strength and moisture, and that'll move northeastward and could bring some rain into the southeast coast, or could make a landfall by morning. Definitely by midday tomorrow, rain will be spreading into the area along with increasing winds. Out to the west, not a lot going on. Next system out here, cloud shield with that. To the west, that'll be pushing rain and an increase in the winds, maybe small craft advisory level winds. We'll take a look at the marine forecast there here later, but otherwise will be mostly over the western Aleutians later tonight and tomorrow, and some shower activity today near the Pueblos due to a week's disturbance mostly to the west there in a trough. And then some more cloudiness here in over the Yukon Delta, but partly mostly sunny skies, Bristol Bay, up through the Kuskokwim Valley areas. And rolling that through once again, or jumping to today's chart, you can see partly to mostly sunny skies here. This is the most sunny area right through here, and some sunshine in the Seward Peninsula, upper Yukon Valley, upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country. Just some isolated showers here, basically dry over the southeast interior, as well as the Tanana Valley. Isolated showers trying to develop along the Alaska Range. Also, western Prince William Sound and the mountainous terrain of the eastern Kenai Peninsula. Didn't see anything reported at Whittier or Portage or Seward today, but they could get a shower here before the day ends or the evening ends. Then they will dissipate. This weak low here near Kodiak, that actually associated with the upper level system, which is the center of which is southwest of the surface low. And that's what triggered those thunderstorms over the Aleutian Range this afternoon or at midday today, and then earlier today over the Alaska Peninsula. And then there's this weak system coming up over the top of the ridge of high pressure over the central Aleutians, brought a few showers into the Pribilofs. Otherwise, really nothing significant going on out here. Just a lot of clouds, winds on the light side, low clouds, fog, and drizzle. Mostly dry conditions across the Aleutians. And then the isolated showers here are becoming more isolated as time goes on. Actually, some clearing showing up over the central panhandle. And generally, kind of a mostly cloudy day for the North Gulf Coast. And for tonight, still look for periods of rain, light rain, fog, and drizzle. Don't expect any heavy rain. Winds not too bad, not much of a gradient up there now. Maybe a little bit of an increase here as this low center begins to try to move eastward. But generally, it'll stay unsettled up there for the next couple of days on the North Slope and Arctic coast with the Arctic jet kind of in control of the weather there. Here's the next system gathering moisture, clouds, maybe pushing rain into the coastal areas of the Panhandle late tonight. And those should move close enough to bring a chance of moisture into Kodiak Island, mainly on the east side tonight, maybe on the Kenai Peninsula. A few showers around, mostly cloudy skies. Alaska Range, a few showers as well. Could break out anywhere along the central Alaska Range all the way down in toward actually Kodiak, and it stays dry and fair over the central interior. And back to the west, several areas of possible measurable precipitation could occur. One over the Seward Peninsula here, along with lower flying conditions, one right along the Yukon Delta coast, Nunivak Island, in the form of light rain, fog, or drizzle, or a combination of all three. And then yet another one here sliding on into the Alaska Peninsula. Next system out to the west there, pushing rain late tonight into the western Aleutians. And for tomorrow, that tries to push to Adak, may make it by late afternoon. Probably by evening you'll see some rain move into the Adak area, and maybe winds up to 25 knots here sustained in advance of the front. Light winds and fair conditions over the central and eastern Bering Sea. This trough kind of dissipating as it spreads, or another one comes down toward the Alaska Peninsula. Kind of just a continuation of the unsettled weather with that westerly flow off the Bering Sea. Mostly cloudy skies, scattered showers inland or drizzle, fog, maybe some really light rain here along the coastal areas. Seward Peninsula a little more variable, as well as the northwest coast. And then front still draped across the North Slope and Arctic coast. Mostly sunny Kodiak Island, wind going back to northwest. Northward, Kuskokwim Valley, Cook Inlet, mostly sunny. Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, showers again tried to develop along the Alaska Range. And wind and rain into the Panhandle could be moderate, maybe even possibly heavy, briefly heavy at times here with gale force winds with this system. Moving on to Tuesday, that moves eastward, washes out, just left with the remnants of trough here. Early in the morning, the best day of showers lingering. Diminishing definitely in the afternoon, but probably will linger into the afternoon, especially over toward the border, but mostly sunny over the northern Panhandle. Southern Alaska looking really good. Dry flow, sunshine for Kodiak Island. That trough axis off to your east. High pressure here over the southeast Bering Sea. And this front a little bit farther to the south, so areas of light rain. Brooks Range could spill into the northern upper Yukon Valley, northern Koyukuk, and the Kobuk Valley in toward Kotzebue Sound. But any precipitation through here will be really light. And the lows tonight in the 40s, highs 60 to 70 over southern Alaska tomorrow, and about the same the following day.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather graphic. Still smoke, somewhat of a problem, causing a fuss here at Kenai Peninsula, possibly in the northern Cook Inlet or so, with the advisory out for tonight. Otherwise, some marginal VFR up right up to the Alaska Range, Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast. Maybe some IFR there along and just east of Fognak Island. IFR for the southeast coast, and the swath here of IFR, Arctic coast, part of the North Slope, southward through the Bering Strait, along the Yukon Delta coast, across Nunivak Island, the Pribilofs, down to the Aleutians. And in the afternoon, the marginal VFR burns off. Good VFR, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, just about all the eastern interior, northward to the Brooks Range. IFR persisting south side of the mountains, but wrapping around the Arctic coast and catching some of the North Slope, also the northern Bering Sea. Southern Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound look pretty IFR-ish tomorrow, and a patch off the southwest coast, here just southwest of Kuskokwim Bay. And a narrow band of IFR here slipping across Unalaska Island to the Alaska Peninsula, and more widespread IFR with the moisture in the next system spreading into the western Aleutians, and marginal VFR, northern Panhandle, IFR to the south. And for the following morning, Tuesday morning, IFR here, southern southeast coast, and then more of the eastern half as you head north there. Kind of a mixed condition here over southern Alaska, areas of marginal VFR, areas of VFR, areas of smoke around the Kenai Peninsula, and VFR for the eastern interior. Big area of IFR now. Brooks Range, North Slope, Arctic coast narrowing out as you head southwest to the Seward Peninsula and Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island. Northern Bering Sea, mostly marginal, patchy IFR, but that increases and becomes quite widespread as you head southwest. Tuesday afternoon, IFR here, western southwest Bering Sea to almost to Atka or so, with marginal VFR, the remainder of the coast, or the remainder of the Bering Sea up to the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coast, as well as inland here. So a lot of marginal VFR moisture increased Tuesday afternoon. Some of that trying to push across the Alaska Range into western Cook Inlet. It's kind of iffy if it does. Bristol Bay, though, staying mostly VFR, south side of the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak, yet another VFR day, or another back to the VFR. Kenai Peninsula, Copper River Basin, Upper Tanana Valley look pretty good. Marginal VFR for the southeast coast. Anatuvik, marginal VFR, northern entrance, otherwise VFR on down to the south. That same forecast also for Adigan. Lowest conditions, northern entrance, but I think the pass itself and southward, VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR. Rainy, starting out marginal, becoming VFR. That same forecast goes for Windy. And Isabel Mentasta also starting out with marginal VFR conditions, possibly. Definitely the lower flying conditions in the morning, better in the afternoon. And for Tanita, I'll go VFR the entire day for that pass. And Portage starts out marginal. I don't think it'll be IFR. It should be marginal at worst tomorrow morning, then becoming VFR later on. And, whoop, wrong side, Chilkoot and White. IFR to start and marginal VFR probably by, we'll say, midday through the afternoon. And the freezing levels, 6,000 feet here over the northern Panhandle into the Copper River Basin, 8 to 10,000 feet there on the southern coast there. A little bit of a gradient with that next system pushing in, and 2 to 4,000 feet up along the Arctic coast, 6,000 feet extending south-southwest right into the Kuskokwim Mountains, Kuskokwim Valley area, and actually into the southeast Bering Sea, and then a little bit milder, about 10,000 feet through here, and then falling back to 6,000 over the western Aleutians. Icing, that next system coming in from the west, that'll push another batch of icing with some possible considerable moderate above about 7,000 feet there. And areas of light or isolated moderate rime icing, I'll call it above about 6,000 feet due to the Arctic jet up there and the systems passing along the Arctic coast North Slope. And the Panhandle, that's the big batch of icing threat tomorrow, with considerable moderate above 8,000. Associated with this upper level low, southwesterlies 120 knots into the southern southeast coast, and then this upper low spreading out into the western Aleutians, westerlies at 60 along the Arctic coast. And 25 to 40 knots at 9,000 feet up there for the Arctic coast. Not too bad for the Aleutians or the Bering Sea with ridging. Increase in the winds, 35 to 40 knots for the southeast coast, about the same at 3,000 feet. Turbulence-wise, light or considerable moderate chop along the outer coastline of the Panhandle, and pretty bumpy for the Brooks Range on out to the eastern Arctic coast.
Technology. It's the rhythm of our everyday life. We're more dependent on satellite and communication systems than at any other time in history. Disruptions can affect our economy and even our safety. To prepare for the effects of such events and minimize impacts, we need to look outside our atmosphere, some 93 million miles away, at a star we call the Sun. It's our main energy source, It warms the Earth and grows our food. While the sun and the space between may seem pleasant from our perspective, it's anything but peaceful. At its surface exists a chaotic state of eruptions and radiation. And unlike Vegas, what happens at the sun doesn't stay at the sun.
Space weather is essentially emissions from the sun, radiation, magnetic field that erupts from the solar surface, pumped out into space, sometimes right towards Earth. When it impacts the Earth, it impacts our technology. That's what we call space weather.
These solar events and their effects at Earth can disrupt systems we take for granted. From causing blackouts to the power grid, to delaying offshore drilling operations due to inaccurate GPS data. Interference with communication systems can force air traffic to reroute and impact rescue response and coordination. Outside our atmosphere, solar radiation can harm astronauts and the systems they depend on. The good news is that these eruptions can be detected early. Forecasters at the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado, have their eyes on the sun at all times.
The Space Weather Prediction Center is part of the National Weather Service and is very much like a normal weather forecast office. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're looking at data, we're looking at imagery, we're looking at model outputs. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches of imminent activity to our customers so they can take action.
In many ways, forecasting space weather is a lot like forecasting hurricanes. Those who rely on space weather forecasts, like electric power grid managers, are informed early on and can begin taking protective action.
When we see an eruption on the sun, space weather forecasters will issue a watch. This is much like a hurricane watch. When a hurricane sits offshore of Miami, for example, perhaps 48 hours out, we too can see way in advance that something may be coming towards the Earth.
As the storm moves toward us, it hits a monitoring spacecraft orbiting 1 million miles away from Earth.
It's kind of our buoy sitting out there offshore, and that hurricane, about 30, 45 minutes before it makes landfall, we'll get the measurements from the buoy. That's what this spacecraft does for us. That big eruption that left the sun hits the spacecraft. Now we've got the measurements of exactly what's going to impact us here on Earth, and we issue the warnings to give the power grid a heads up that the storm is now imminent. An interesting element to this whole process is that when the forecasters issue the alert, the power grid receives the alert, takes the necessary actions to protect the grid, and the average citizen never knows anything ever happened.
The number of customers who rely on space weather information continues to grow. As our reliance on technology increases, so will our need for constant monitoring of the sun.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
GPS has changed society. Most people don't realize how remarkable and how many different applications there are.
The GPS has become an integral part, not just of our daily lives as far as cell phones and guidance for our cars and mapping, but the whole system in agriculture is really relying heavily on high accuracy GPS.
So they're using GPS to plant those seeds with centimeter accuracy. And then they can come behind it and irrigate and fertilize right where that seed is with that 1 centimeter accuracy.
The GPS creates a line for the operator that he can steer along, or you go to another level and the operator doesn't steer anymore and the tractor has an automatic steering system on it, much like a cruise control on a car, except for when I push the button, it doesn't drive a set speed. When I push a button, it stays on a predefined line.
You don't even need lights. You can do it at nighttime. You program your GPS and it's driving that tractor for you. So it's huge, and it's changing the way that the farmers farm the fields.
6 or 7 days out.
There's an interest in GPS applications from space weather side because when the sun is eruptive, it causes GPS to falter, and in some cases it doesn't work at all.
Productivity may suffer to a certain degree in that there's no way that I as a human being can steer as good 8 hours a day as a GPS system's going to do. It's going to be the same all day long. Some of the other application technologies, those are going to be gone. We're not going to have the ability to do good section control on sprayers and planters and fertilizer applicators without GPS.
We see a huge growing customer base in so many different industries, so many different sectors now relying on GPS and high precision GPS. They're all big customers for us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. A little different here. Been some changes here in the orientation of the ice edge. Still way off the coast here and really fading away back there northwest of Wrangell Island. Just a little bit left on the graphic there. Not a lot of change. Continued slow thawing or melting. And then the main ice field's kind of shifting around with the wind and currents. And coastal water forecast. Next storm coming in tomorrow morning. Gale force winds from the south-southeast, 35 knot winds on the south coast, east 35 on the north coast, seas at about 7 feet, north 15 there for Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, southeast coming up to 30 knots for Stevens Passage, and gale warnings also out for Clarence Strait, southeast 35. Tuesday, the storm moves through tomorrow evening and overnight and is out of the area for Tuesday. So south 15 for Clarence Strait, southwest 15 to 20 on the south coast. Looking at a north wind here, kind of strange there. North of 25, 6-foot seas, and then back down to south at 10, north 10. Lynn Canal, southeast 20 for Stevens Passage. And then Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, north winds 10 knots tomorrow, pretty light, 2-foot seas. Small craft advisories, northerlies at 25, 6-foot seas for the Barren Islands, northeast 25. For the western North Gulf Coast and approaching gale force on the eastern North Gulf Coast. Got to get over toward Cape St. Elias, pick up those minimum gales. Otherwise, Prince William Sound, northeast of 15. And for Tuesday, north 10 for the Sound, and light winds also for the eastern North Gulf Coast. East at 10 on the western coast with 4-foot seas for that zone. West 20 knots, Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay. North 10, light winds for Cook Inlet with 1 to 2-foot seas. And for Bristol Bay, northwest winds at 20 knots for the day tomorrow, and west-northwest at 20 across the Alaska Peninsula. In fact, 20-knot winds from the northwest from Cape Sarachev right up to Sitkinak. North 20 here on the east side of Kodiak Island. Northwest at 10 for Shelikof Strait. Tuesday, northwest 20, Bristol Bay. North 15 for the Alaska Peninsula. Northwest 15, Castle Cape to Sitkinak here. West 15 for all of the Kodiak Island zones. And for the western Aleutians, that next system, kicking the winds up to southeast at 25, so small craft advisories there. West of Adak, slowly, gradually pushing eastward, but won't make Adak by tomorrow afternoon, maybe overnight tomorrow night. South 15 for the central Aleutians, and westerlies, mostly west, 10 to 20 knots for the eastern Aleutians, Fox Islands. And then on Tuesday, Unalaska Island, northwest 10 to 15. Unimak Island, south-southeast 15 to 20. Athabasca, south-southeast 25 to 30 knots. Small craft advisories there. And that extends out west of Adak, then about Amchitka westward, becoming pretty light out of the south. And for the southwest coast, north of Nunivak Island, Yukon Delta coast, west at 20, and south of the island into Kamishak Bay, west 15, northwest 15 for the Pribilofs, and west 25 for St. Matthew Island, small craft advisory, southwest 25 for St. Lawrence Island. And west 25 for St. Lawrence Island on Tuesday. Otherwise, that diminishes as you go down the Yukon Delta coast, turns northwest at 20 south of Nunivak Island. Light winds for the Pribilofs, southeast 20 for St. Matthew Island. 15 to 20 knot westerlies here, strongest on the extreme eastern zones here, the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Central coast west 15, east 20 on the west coast, and then southwest 25 here from Wales up to Cape Beaufort. So it'll be kind of a convergence zone right in there. And then for Tuesday, west 15, Wales to Cape Thompson, 20 knot winds there coming around Cape Lisburne, then back down to 15. For the western central coast, northeast 15 on the eastern coast to down to 10 knots toward demarcation point. For tonight, again, we've got this system gathering moisture and beginning to get a little bit organized. And we'll push gale force winds in tomorrow to the southeast coast. Rainfall might make the outer coastline by morning, but definitely during the morning tomorrow. Otherwise, scattered showers, mostly cloudy, still some areas of smoke here for southern Alaska, fair in the interior. And it stays unsettled there for the Arctic coast, North Slope for the next couple of days as this frontal action kind of remains in place up there with the Arctic jet. And for tomorrow, mostly sunny, Kodiak Island northward into the interior here. Isolated showers along the Alaska Range, otherwise partly to mostly sunny for the southeast interior. Rain and wind, possibly moderate, briefly heavy maybe for the southeast coast there with gusts to 45, 50 miles an hour. And in the outlook for Tuesday, this front a little farther to the south with some light rain into the Brooks Range, maybe getting into the northern valleys there. Sunny, southern Alaska, and warm.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.